Chapter 9. The Fading Light. I did not dream. That alone should have told me something was wrong. For as long as I could remember, sleep had never been empty. Even before I took my oaths, before the tribunal's sigils were burned into my armor and my name etched into the rolls. There had always been something waiting when I closed my eyes. Warmth. Pressure. A presence that did not speak exactly, but watched, the way the sun watches stone and leaves it changed without ever asking permission. Now, there was nothing. I woke with the cold pressed hard against my ribs. The fire burned down to a sullen bed of coals at the edge of our camp. Above me, the stars were sharp and distant, uncaring points of light scattered across a sky that felt suddenly very large. I lay still for a long time, listening. The forest did not sound wrong, not like it had on the road to Emberfall, when even the insects had seemed hesitant, their rhythms broken by something they could not name. This forest breathed normally. Wind stirred the high branches. Something small moved through undergrowth. Somewhere far off, an owl called and was answered. And yet, I lifted my hand and whispered a prayer I had spoken every morning since my initiation. Nothing answered. No warmth gathered behind my sternum. No gentle tightening. No sense of alignment sliding into place. The words fell into the dark like stones dropped into deep water, soundless, swallowed whole. I swallowed and sat up. The motion made the world tilt slightly, just enough to remind me that exhaustion had crept into my bones. Sometime during the night, my armor lay beside me, polished out of habit despite everything. The sigil of Solin etched into the breastplate caught the firelight faintly. Once, that symbol had been enough. I pressed my palm to it, closed my eyes, and tried again. This time not with words, but with intent. Light of judgment, I thought. If you are there. Pain flared behind my eyes. I hissed and broke the contact, breath coming faster than it should have. The pain faded quickly, leaving behind not relief, but something worse. A hollow echo, as if I had struck a cracked bell and heard the fracture sing. I had felt that sensation before, during the ambush. During the moment, I raised my blade and chose not to obey. A choice, the oracle had said. Obedience was no longer neutral. I stood and moved away from the others, boots whispering over pine needles. Lysa slept curled near the remnants of the fire, her hair loose, embers occasionally flickering along the strands. In time with her breathing, Bram sat propped against a fallen log, eyes closed but posture alert. The rest of him never fully slept. Thalen lay farther out, half-shadowed, one hand resting near his bow. Maeryn was on watch. She noticed me immediately. "You feel it too," she said quietly, before I could speak. I stopped beside her, gaze fixed on the tree line. I was hoping it was just me. Maeryn exhaled through her nose. "Your prayers didn't take. It wasn't a question. No." She nodded once, jaw tight. The broken gauntlet on her left hand caught the starlight, its fracture a pale scar across the metal. Mine didn't either. That should have terrified me more than it did. Instead, I felt a strange, creeping calm, as if some part of me had been bracing for this since the moment Solin's voice had broken in my sanctum back in Dawnspear. "How long?" I asked. Maeryn considered. "Since the terrace, since you stood between the Oracle and the Obedientists." The title still tasted wrong. Obedientists, paladins who had surrendered interpretation entirely, who believed holiness was measured by how quickly you silenced your conscience. I thought doubt weakened the light, I said. She looked at me sharply. That's what we were taught. And, she said, softer now, maybe doubt isn't the cause. Maybe it's the symptom. I let that settle between us. When I closed my eyes again, I could still feel the ghost of divine alignment, the way my power used to click into place like a key finding its lock. Now there was resistance, static, something layered between me and the source, as if the channel itself had been wrapped in thorns. I can still feel something, I admitted, but it's distant, like trying to hear a voice through stone. Maeryn's expression tightened. Then you're doing better than I am. That startled me. What do you mean? She flexed her fingers slowly. I don't feel distant. I feel blocked, like someone slammed a door and bolted it from the other side. A memory surfaced unbidden. Maeryn, standing in a snow-choked village years ago, blade in hand, obedience outweighing mercy. The silence that followed. No reassurance, she had said. No correction. Just absence. I wondered then, not for the first time, how many of us had mistaken that silence for approval. We stood there until the fire gave a quiet crack and Lysa stirred, mumbling something incoherent and rolling onto her back. A pulse of warmth spread outward, not divine, but arcane, instinctive. The cold retreated a fraction. I felt it immediately. Not relief, contrast. Lysa's fire did not demand alignment. It did not test worthiness or recoil from hesitation. It simply was, responding to her will and emotion with equal honesty. I exhaled slowly. Fire doesn't care if you're certain, Thalen said from the dark. I turned. He had risen without sound, as he always did, and now leaned against a tree with his arms crossed. Fire answers, whether you deserve it or not, he continued. Light likes to pretend it's different. Maeryn bristled. Careful. I am, Thalen replied mildly. His gaze flicked to me. That's why I'm saying this now, before it gets worse. How reassuring, I muttered. He ignored the tone. Your connection is unstable, not gone, but compromised. If you keep trying to force it, you'll tear something, either in yourself or in whatever's left on the other end. You speak as if divine power is a rope under tension, I said. It is, he replied. You were just trained never to look at the fibers. I had no immediate answer for that. Instead, I turned inward, assessing myself the way I would a wounded soldier. My strength felt intact. My reflexes were sharp, but beneath it all was a faint tremor. A sense that something fundamental had shifted, and my body had not yet decided how to compensate. When did you first notice the interference? I asked him. Thalen hesitated, just long enough to matter. Years ago, he said finally. Small things at first. Creatures reacting to prayers like they were wounds. Shrines that caused sickness instead of solace. Paladins who came back wrong. Maeryn's voice was tight. You never reported it. I did, he said. To people who didn't want to hear it. I thought of High Justicar Malric, of rumors spread like rot through the tribunal's halls, of young paladins quietly reassigned or erased. And Emberfall? I asked. Not the source, Thalen said. The fault line. Pressure builds somewhere else, and it cracks where the stone is already thin. My chest tightened. Because the Oracle listens. Because she waits, he corrected. That makes her dangerous. The word echoed in my mind, dangerous, and for the first time I understood why the command had taken the shape it did. Execute the Oracle of Emberfall. Remove the variable. Silence the witness. Lysa sat up suddenly, eyes bright, despite the early hour. "You're thinking too loud." I startled, then laughed weakly. I didn't realize that was a habit. Isai mor kshi dorwin. Sir, you're scared," she said simply. She rose, brushing pine needles from her cloak. "And you are." I didn't deny it. She moved closer, studying my face with the same careful attention she used when tending burns or fevers. "Your light feels thinner," she said, "like it's being stretched or drained," Bram murmured from behind her. He had joined us quietly, hammer hanging at his side, like an extension of his arm. A vessel can crack even if the source remains. I met his eyes. "Can it be repaired?" Bram considered. "That depends. Are you trying to restore what was, or make room for what should be?" The question lodged deep. I had sworn to serve Solon, to uphold justice, to obey, but obedience, I was learning, could be bent, used, turned into a blade pointed inward. I looked at my hands, scarred, steady, human. "If my power fails completely," I said, "I become a liability." Maeryn shook her head immediately. "You become honest." Thalen nodded. "And dangerous, in a different way." Lysa smiled faintly. "You become like the rest of us." That, more than anything, unsettled me. For my entire life, I had stood slightly apart, marked by light, defined by certainty. Now that certainty was eroding, grain by grain, and I was being asked to decide who I was without it. The forest brightened slowly as dawn approached, pale light filtering through branches. I felt no answering resonance in my chest, but I was still standing. And somewhere deep beneath the silence, beneath the interference and the lies, I could almost sense it. Not a command, not a judgment, but a presence under strain, waiting. Dawn did not arrive with ceremony. It simply happened, a gradual thinning of shadow, a softening of edges. The forest revealed itself in pieces, bark textures, dew-beaded leaves, the pale smoke curling from the fire as Bram coaxed it back to life with patient hands. I watched the light spill through the branches and felt nothing answer it. Once, dawn had been my anchor. The hour when prayer came easiest, when Solon's presence felt closest, not because he spoke, but because he approved. That approval had been as real to me as breath. It had shaped my posture, my voice, my very sense of right and wrong. Now the sun rose, and the world did not care whether I was aligned. I knelt, anyway, not because I expected power, but because the habit was carved too deep to abandon. My knee pressed into damper, the scent of pine, sharp in my lungs. I rested my hands on my thighs and closed my eyes. "I am here," I said quietly. "I am listening." Nothing answered. No pain this time. No recoil. Just silence. Thick, layered, deliberate. I stayed there longer than was comfortable, long enough for my muscles to complain, for doubt to begin whispering that this was foolish, indulgent, even dangerous. Long enough that I could almost imagine the old warmth returning if I simply waited. It did not. When I finally stood, my legs were stiff, my thoughts unsettled, but beneath that unease was something else. A strange steadiness, as if a weight I hadn't known I carried had been set down. "You didn't force it," Bram said softly. I turned. He had been watching from the fire, his expression unreadable beneath his beard. "No," I admitted. "I didn't know how." "That may be the first honest prayer you've made in years," he said. I frowned. "I prayed constantly." "Yes," Bram agreed. But you expected an answer. That struck harder than it should have. Lysa approached, holding a tin cup out to me. Steam curled upward, scented faintly with herbs. "Tea," she said. "It won't fix anything, but it helps with the shaking." I accepted it with a nod. "Am I shaking?" "A little," she said gently. "Not with fear, with strain." I wrapped my hands around the cup. The warmth seeped into my fingers immediately. Simple, physical, honest. "How long can this last?" I asked. "This thinning," Thalen snorted from where he was checking the perimeter. "Depends. Are you still trying to be a conduit?" I stiffened. "I don't know how to be anything else." He met my gaze without flinching. "Then you're going to break." The words were blunt, but not cruel. "You're treating this like a wound that needs to heal," he continued. "It's not. It's a joint that's been set wrong your whole life. Now it's slipping back where it belongs, and it hurts like hell." Maeryn crossed her arms. "You're assuming he survives the adjustment," Thalen shrugged. "Most don't." That earned him a sharp look from Lysa, but she didn't contradict him. I stared into my tea, watching the steam rise and vanish. "What happens to a paladin when the light stops answering?" Bram answered instead. "Some cling harder. They shout. They demand. They confuse volume with devotion." "And the others?" I asked. "They listen," he said. "And some of them realize they were never meant to be instruments." The word echoed in my mind. Instrument. That was how the Tribunal spoke of us when they thought we weren't listening. Tools shaped by oath and power, necessary, replaceable. I had believed that was holy. "I can still fight," I said, "more to myself than anyone else. I can still protect." "Of course you can," Maeryn said immediately. "Your worth was never in the glow." I looked at her. "Wasn't it?" She hesitated, just for a breath. "I thought it was," she admitted. "Once." I remembered her confession on the road, the command she obeyed, the silence that followed. "And now?" I asked. "Now I know better," she said, "and I would trade every ounce of borrowed light to undo what I did." The forest was quiet again, not ominously so, just present. I took a slow breath and let my awareness stretch outward, not in prayer, but in perception. I felt the ground beneath my boots, the weight of my armor, the subtle shifts in the air that told me a breeze was coming before it arrived. It was different, but it was not empty. "Something is still there," I said slowly, "under the interference. Not Solin's voice, not the command, something else." Thalen's expression sharpened. "A signal beneath the noise." "Yes." I pressed my fingers to my chest. "It doesn't push. It doesn't pull. It just exists." Bram nodded. "Truth often does." Lysa's eyes widened slightly. "You're not trying to channel it, are you?" "No," I said. "I don't think it can be channeled." Silence fell again, heavier this time, not with dread, but with realization. "If the gods are bound," Maeryn said slowly, "then what you're feeling might be what's left when authority is stripped away." The thought sent a shiver through me. Not power, not command, presence. A memory surfaced, unbidden and vivid. I was young, barely old enough to hold a practice blade. The training hall at Dawnspear smelled of oil and stone dust. A master stood behind me as I struggled through a form, correcting my posture with firm hands. "Feel the alignment," he had said. "Don't think. Don't question. The light knows the path. I had obeyed, and I had been praised. Now, standing in a quiet forest, far from marble halls and golden spires, I wondered how much of my faith had been built on convenience. What if I can't hear Solon clearly again? I asked. Thalen's answer was immediate. Then maybe you're not meant to. That sparked something sharp in my chest. Not anger, but fear. If I abandon him... Stop, Bram said gently. You're not abandoning anything. You're removing yourself from a lie. I looked at him. What if Solon is still complicit? What if, even bound, he allowed this? Bram's gaze was steady. Then he will have to answer for it. The idea felt blasphemous and freeing. Lysa stepped closer. You told me once that oaths don't make us good, she said. They just make our choices louder. I remembered. It had been said offhand, barely a thought at the time. What choice are you afraid of now? She asked. I didn't answer immediately, because the truth was there, stark and unavoidable. I'm afraid, I said finally, that without certainty, I might choose wrong. Maeryn placed a hand on my shoulder. You always might have. Thalen nodded. That's the point. The fire crackled softly. Somewhere nearby, a bird took flight. I straightened slowly. All my life, I said, I believed righteousness was something external, something bestowed, that if I listened hard enough, obeyed completely enough, I would never have to wonder if I was just. I met each of their gazes in turn. Now I understand that obedience was the shield. It kept the weight of responsibility from crushing me. No one interrupted. If the light never answers the same way again, I continued, then every action I take will be mine, fully, without excuse. Bram smiled faintly. Welcome to faith. The word felt different now, stripped of ceremony, heavy with consequence. I reached for my sword. For a moment my heart lurched, expecting resistance, backlash, the familiar surge of alignment that always accompanied the gesture. None came. The blade slid free with a clean whisper. I held it up, watching dawnlight catch along the edge. Steel, balanced, unremarkable. Yet when I stepped into a simple form, nothing ritualized, nothing consecrated, it moved as it always had. My body knew this. I did not need permission to defend. I lowered the blade and met Maeryn's eyes. If my power fails completely, we adapt, she said. And if the tribunal hunts us, Thalen added. I exhaled. Then they'll have to face paladins who choose. That, more than anything, felt dangerous. The path ahead was uncertain. Emberfall lay behind us, Dawnspear far ahead, or perhaps forever out of reach. The light I had trusted all my life was no longer a compass I could surrender myself to. But as we broke camp and set back onto the road, I realized something vital. The silence no longer felt like abandonment. It felt like space, and in that space, fragile, terrifying, necessary, I would decide what kind of paladin I was willing to be. Not because a god commanded it, but because I chose to stand where lies could not.